Hello readers and welcome back to Tell Between Tales. Today I have a great lineup for you of epic fantasy, whimsical fantasy, and emotional depth. These are my 5-star reads of the first quarter, January, February, March. All right, are you excited? Because I'm excited. We're going to talk the best of the year so far, and 4 books that I do have a full-length review for, or at least a full-length review maybe for the first book. I will go ahead and link those down in the description box below. All right, let's go ahead and get started. These books are in no particular order. This is not a list of 1 to 10 or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. These are just all of my books that have gotten 5 stars, and all of them are fantastic. So we're going to start today with The Tenacious Tale of Tana the Tendersword. I love this book. This book, while being a middle grade book, it was able to land a spot of the SPFBO 2024 competition and rightly deserves its place. This was so much fun. The Tenacious Tale of Tana the Tendersword is a spunky story about a young quester in training and her chronicler in training who follows her around and details her exploits. We have a sunshine and supreme optimism character in Tana, and the doom and gloom grumpy chronicler as well. His name is Galdefort. Every character in this book is enigmatic, and speaking of animal companions, the peg-legged rooster named Pegs is also a fantastic animal companion. Whether he is belching fireballs at enemies by eating exploding berries or preening his feathers, his antics are endearing and will bring a smile to your face. I love how they created a world where being a hero is a profession that you can go to school for. And there is even a rather extensive rule book as far as what quests you can accept based off of how far you have gone in this school and what level you are at. And if you are at a level 1, you need to be accepting a level 1 quest, and you are not allowed to accept a level 2 quest. And this is all written down in the rule book with lots and lots of footnotes. We even have paperwork for the approved process of accepting quest requests. And you can't accept a quest request that is above your current quest level. And if you are on a quest and you get an extended quest request, then you have to fill out the paperwork for approval. And if you don't, your quest may not count and you may not level up. I thought that this book was very creative, and it was just a riot. It had a lot of different ideas and mythology, and it just had a lot of really fun characters, and the quest was really fantastic. And the characters, they do both grow and change at least a little bit over the story, and it was a great time. I highly recommend this book. It is an indie book, and so there's my shout out to indie authors. The next book that I gave 5 stars to is Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett. This is the 3rd book in the Emily Wilde series. The first book is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I feel like a lot of people have heard about this one. It's pretty popular now on BookTube. And this is a cozy fantasy series, and I really loved all 3 of them. I think I gave 5 stars to all 3 books. This one is really fun. It is about an introverted genius professor who studies fairies, and her name is Emily Wilde. The first book takes place in Le Jocelyn during the winter and follows her adventures studying the mysterious courtly fae who inhabit that region. She is joined by fellow scholar Wendell Bambleby, who is her exact opposite in every way. If Emily is very smart and dedicated and introverted and a little bit drab and very hardworking, then Wendell is very bombastic and outgoing and extroverted and very messy and lazy. And he shows up in her little cabin in Le Jocelyn and really helps her win over the locals, and is important in helping Emily as she entangles herself with the courtly fae and the local legends and the local stories, and she just kind of makes a mess out of things and gets really involved. And he is an important character there. So if you've seen a couple of my other reviews, we do have LGBTQ representation in this book. But you know what I really like about this book and the representation that we see is that the characters in this book are really allowed to just be in this book. They're just allowed to be characters and to be doing what they're doing. And while they become an important part of what drives the plot forward, they're not used as a political or a social or moral message in any way. They're allowed to just exist in this story. And that is what I really love about the representation in this book, is that it's not trying to convince anyone of anything. It's not trying to make anyone feel guilty or check a box or be in your face. And it doesn't really pull you out of the story. I feel like that's what a lot of representation used to be like in fantasy, whereas today we get things that are a little bit more pushy and kind of it's in there for a purpose, especially in books that don't have any LGBTQ tags, which this one does not. And our characters weave into but don't overshadow the larger plot lines of the story. And therefore, I can read it and I can just allow it to be without feeling like my beliefs, my viewpoints, or my ideals are being attacked, critiqued, or judged. And therefore, this series still gets 5 stars. And I really enjoyed these books and I will keep recommending them. The next book that I read that I gave 5 stars to is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Now, this probably comes as no surprise, or maybe it is a little bit of a surprise given how jaded I am by Wind and Truth. But as a lot of people know, this one came out, it was the first book in the Year of Sanderson series that came out in 2023, and I finally got around to reading it. And I feel like there's been a lot of commentary and a lot of reviews about this book, so I'm going to try to add to that instead of just repeating everything that you probably already know about this book. This book is much more enriching for people who know about the Cosmere and who are well read up on Sanderson's books, especially Mistborn Eras 1 and 2, as well as Elantris, and having a good knowledge and idea of who exactly Hoid is. However, that being said, you can read this book and understand the plot without having read all of that. I do think that having that knowledge and knowing how investiture works really enhances the experience of this book. Now, one of the main reasons why being well-versed in the Cosmere will give you maximum enjoyment of this book is because Hoid is our narrator. And so this book definitely has a very light tone. You get a lot of Hoid's sarcasm and witty comments, and sometimes they're funny and sometimes you roll your eyes, but I still really enjoyed it. I do think that most people probably know by now that Tress of the Emerald Sea was inspired by The Princess Bride, where Sanderson wanted the main character, mainly Buttercup, to take a more active, prominent role when her love interest goes missing, and so hence Tress of the Emerald Sea. Tress is essentially Buttercup, and when her love interest goes missing, instead of just sitting around doing nothing, she goes and searches for him. In true Sanderson style, a careful reading of this book will allow a reader to deduce and figure out certain plot points before they are revealed, and my mom was a little bit quote-unquote mad at me that I was able to figure out some of the plot points and the big reveals, and she wasn't. And so that was really fun. And I never feel like when I figure out a Sanderson reveal that I am robbed of an experience or that it's predictable, because he does it on purpose, where he plants seeds along the way. And if you can pick up on all these little clues, you can deduce kind of what's going on. Now, while I didn't figure absolutely everything out, I did figure out a couple of the things, and I was very proud of myself for that. So this was really fun. It was a great time and I highly recommend it. Now for this next recommendation, I listened to all of these on audio, and this is probably the best audio performance that I have ever listened to. Our narrator is Tim Gerard Reynolds, and he does a fantastic job. And the series I am referring to is the Rhaenyra Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan. This series just took my breath away. I am a little bit obsessed. I was able to get through all 6 books. Now, it's a little bit deceptive because there's only 3 actual books out: Theft of Swords, Rise of Empire, and Heir of Navron. However, each one of these books contains 2 books in it, and these are separate individual books. So there really are 6 books total. They've just been stuffed into 3 published copies. And so I guess that's a good thing, because when you get one of these, you get 2 stories for the price of 1. Now, I do have a review and a discussion about the first 2 books. I have a non-spoiler review and then a spoiler discussion. They're in the same video, so you can go check that out if you want a very detailed and in-depth description of this world and kind of what goes on. However, what I'm going to say here is that this is a classic epic fantasy, and I gave every single one of these books 5 stars. I absolutely loved him. I loved Michael J. Sullivan's writing, and I loved the way he told his stories and the way he brought about events. Everything seemed important and interesting for either plot or for character development and driving things forward, and everything ends up being relevant and important as you get further on into the storyline. This is great for anyone who is looking for that classic medieval fantasy feel. We've got our humans, which are going to be the majority of the characters, but we also have representation from elves and dwarves as well. Whereas the elves maybe are kind of like they live outside of where all the humans are. We do get a lot of half-elves and how they are involved in the society, which is mostly that they are ostracized and everybody hates them. And kind of the same thing is going on with the dwarves here, in that we do have dwarven representation on a couple characters. However, dwarves have also, the humans have pushed them and put them over here in a box, and then they're kind of allowed to come and go as needed, and humans need them for different jobs. But humans have really kind of just taken over everything at this point. And we follow 2 extraordinary thieves as they get mixed up in politics and schemes. And it's kind of interesting because they're used to being kind of like the bad guys as they run their own thieving business. And then they get sucked up into all of this stuff, and they end up being the good guys that people keep reaching for to help them out of different situations. Hadrian, our first character, is an extremely accomplished fighter, and Royce, our second thief, is a nimble assassin. The first book is called The Crown Conspiracy. That's the first book within Theft of Swords, and it does an excellent job about introducing us to this world, to our characters, to the way everything is set up, the politics and the mythology and the religion of everything. And it was a really fun read, and that first book is one of my favorites in the series. Normally, I am not the type of person where the first book is like the entry book is my favorite in the series, but in this one, it was just written so well and had such a fun, intriguing plotline that I actually really, really enjoyed it. And even after reading all 6 of them, that first one, The Crown Conspiracy, still remains one of my very favorites of the whole series. If you get really into this world, Sullivan has an expansive list of books that he has written in this world. Definitely start with Rhaenyra Revelations, because his next series is jumps into the past, and then there are things that are revealed that you're going to be finding out when you probably shouldn't be finding out about them, because it will make in his words, it will make the Rhaenyra Revelations less revelation-y. And so definitely make sure to check those out first. But there is a wealth of books that he has written within this world, and he is currently working on writing his sequel series, and he is going to finish that whole series and then release it. So we're not going to get it book by book. We're just going to get kind of like when Netflix dumps a whole season out on TV, we're going to get the whole thing at once, which is a very fun and different experience. So definitely check these out. They are so fun. And the next book that I have to talk about also was an audiobook listen, and also had an excellent narrator. Maybe not quite to the level of Tim Gerard Reynolds, but Tim Curry also does an amazing job, and I really enjoyed listening to the audiobooks on this one as well. Now, Abhorsen is the 3rd book in the trilogy, and in this trilogy, I would say probably the 1st and the 3rd are my favorites in this trilogy. This was a thrilling adventure, and it had a lot of unique qualities to the story. The world that Nyx created is split into 2. We have a wall that divides basically the Old Kingdom from Ancelsier. Now, Ancelsier is akin to our own world, which is magicless and technology driven. And then the Old Kingdom is where magic thrives and technology fails and falls apart. It literally dissolves. The Encelsier border control really struggles with this, as especially when the wind is blowing towards them from the Old Kingdom, they have a difficult time getting their technology to work, like their radios and their phones and their flashlights and their guns and all of the things that modern day society needs. All of these things start to fall apart, and then that becomes a very big problem in the books. Now, while we mainly explore the Old Kingdom, at least in the first book, from Sabriel's point of view, and then in books 2 and 3, there's a time jump between the first and then the second two of about 14 years. And that's when we're introduced to Liriel. And Liriel is the name of the second book. And this series really kind of feels more like a standalone for book 1 and then a duology, rather than like a comprehensive trilogy. So you can easily just read Sabriel if this is something that you're interested in, but not sure if you want to commit to the whole series. As this world might not be for everyone, because there is a lot of dead monsters and kind of gruesome depictions of creatures that have come back from the dead, because our main character Sabriel is a necromancer, but her job is to return the dead to the land of the dead and get them out of the realm of the living. And so you have a lot of these creatures and monsters that come chasing them, or that they go and find, that they have to send back. But I enjoyed the creativity of this world. There are several different forms of magic. You have the bells from the necromancy, and you have the charter magic, and you have like the wind flutes, and you have along with the wind flutes, like the wind magic is all through whistles, and then you have magic items. And Liriel also contains one of my favorite animal companions in the form of the disreputable dog, which she is just a riot. It's so much fun. Such a great and loyal animal companion. We also get Mogget as an animal companion, and he's a cat. And just the way that Nix has written these two characters, with Mogget being snarky and hard to like, and then the disreputable dog being super friendly and loving and really funny. Just the way he chose to write those characters obviously very well fits their physical appearances as cat and dog. And they're always bickering and quarreling, as cats and dogs want to do. So there's that level as well. And it's so fun to read, and it's so fun to listen to. I absolutely loved it. I really highly recommend the whole trilogy. I think it's just a great time. Garth Nix has also written several books, at least 4, I think, other books in this series as prequels. I don't know yet if he has a sequel planned, but he does have several prequel novels that you can pick up and read if you're looking for more from the Old Kingdom. Now, my last 5-star book for this year so far is a little bit different from the rest, which have all been pretty much hardcore fantasy. This one was a book club read that we did, and it was called The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This is a historical fiction about the Dust Bowl era, and I found it deeply interesting to follow. While completely different from my other books on this list, it was exceptional and represented the struggles families endured at the Dust Bowl era and the Great Depression. It showcased how the stubbornness of the farmers both helped and hindered them, and they didn't want to change their farming practices to stop the Dust Bowls. We see the grit it took to stay and the courage it took to leave. We see the dreamers getting a hard dose of reality, but the book ends on a little bit of a hopeful note after going through so much hardship, so it's not all doom and gloom and depressing. We see the prejudice of the local Californians as all these refugees are coming in and flocking there throughout the country, and how there were so many of them that they had to live in squalor, and they were really taken advantage of by the big growers, with like the cotton picking especially, and then the fruit picking and all of the farming industries, because these people were so desperate for work and so desperate to feed their families. We see the beginning of the unionization of the workers, which was very much needed with how badly these people were being taken advantage of and how little they were being paid. And we see how it was such a struggle for the workers because the workers were so afraid to strike because they had so very little. They couldn't afford not to work because then they couldn't feed themselves and faced very real threats of starvation and being sick and dying in several different ways. This story is deeply immersive and tugs pretty strongly at your heartstrings, and it really made me feel very grateful the things that I have. For discussions within your book club, this offers a really great way to open a social commentary on our way of living today versus back then. And the speculation of if our society fell today, would we revert to as bad as it was back then, or would we be better, or would we be worse? In rejecting those in need and creating prejudices and superiority complexes and exploiting the desperate. And of course, the question of does human nature really change, or are we just repeating the same practices and patterns that we have throughout time and throughout history? This is definitely a fantastic read, and I highly recommend it. That is all that I have for you today. Thank you very much. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your 5-star reads of the first quarter are. I would love to hear from you and get new recommendations from all of my viewers. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.